My name is Vito Villani from Lehigh Valley Barber School and Fade on Third Barbershop. First and foremost, I would like to thank Matthew Andis for creating such beautiful equipment. Right here, you have an Andis Supra ZR. You charge it for 90 minutes or less and it runs for 2 hours. Same goes with this cordless Envy Li. Charge it for 90 minutes or less and runs for 2 hours straight. Very powerful machine. And you also have the lightest trimmer that was pretty much ever produced in my eyes, the Andis. So right now what I'm going to talk about is the haircut that I'm going to do. I'm going to give him a bald fade using the Andis ZRs and the detachable blades. First thing we're going to do is we're going to clear our canvas. What I mean by that is starting at the peridial ridge. When you start at the peridial ridge, this area right in here, you're going to start with a higher guard using the cordless Envy. You'll start with, say, a number 5, and then you work your way down 4, 3, 2. And then once we get to 2, we're going to work from the bottom up using the Andis ZR. I'm going to start in the peridial ridge once again. If anybody has any questions, please let me know. Now, when you're using this, you want to follow the wave pattern. The wave pattern is going this way, so you want to cut against the grain, like so. A lot of people like to use a C-stroke, kind of like an airplane that's going off. Now, you don't need to move. Your chair moves, so all you need to do is basically stand in position and move the chair as you keep the clipper in a stationary position. It's good to have all your tools right next to you so you don't have to search around for them. So the next thing in line, if anybody just wants to shout it out, let me know. Below a 5 is a number 4. Now, if I take this 4 above the 5, what's going to happen is I'm going to run into the 5 and it's going to cut the hair too short into the peridial ridge. So I want to stay right underneath the 5. So below the 4 is the number 3. Notice how I'm staying right underneath that number 4. If you're ever in doubt, this clipper's luxury is it goes up and down. The higher it is, the less hair it's going to cut. When you lower it, it's going to cut more hair. So the higher you go in the head, the higher you want to be with the lever. Alright, so now let's talk about what type of fade we're going to give him. We can give him a low fade, a medium fade, or a high fade. It's all about that first guideline around the occipital bone. Now the occipital bone is that bone that we have in the back of our head. It's located right about here. You can actually feel it. Right at the occipital bone is what's known as a natural fade. Under the occipital bone is known as a low fade. Above the occipital bone would be a medium to high fade. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to give him a medium fade, which is also known again as a natural fade. The first thing I'm going to start with is a 4-0. I'm going to make my first guideline. I'll start in the back and come right to the occipital bone. There's my first guide. Now, following that guide, just like a scissor guide, I'm going to drag it right to the side of the head. I'm going to dip it down a little bit when I get towards the shape up so that I can make the outline of the perimeter darker. You always want to dip it down a little bit in the back. You want to make sure it's balanced on both sides of the head. The only way to tell if it's balanced on both sides of the head is look at them from straight on and straight from the back. You have to create symmetry throughout the whole entire haircut. An unbalanced haircut is not what we're looking for. Okay, so now that we established the 4-0 line, we're going to come in with our Andis trimmer and stay underneath the 4-0 line to make the haircut even balder. Now when using this, stay away from the outline of the shape up because we want to make it really prominent and distinctive. These machines are set up perfectly to give you that nice close cut. So now, as most of you know, what gets balder than the Andis trimmer is the shaver. The Andis shaver lives a nice long life as well. It's a very durable shaver. Once you get to where you're going, you just want to pull off. Most people like it really nice and bald around the nape area. When using the shaver, you have to understand that less is more. You don't want to press too hard with the shaver because then you're going to make lines that you can't get rid of. So now what we're going to do is we're going to attach the number 1. So if you were using the Envy, the cordless Envy, it would probably be equivalent to this all the way up, which is also known as a half. Now I'm going to make a guideline above this line, and you're going to see a prominent line. Okay, that was pretty easy. That was almost an inch above the 4-0 line. We used the 1. Now, underneath that, we're going to use what's called an OA. And that's going to stay underneath the 1 line. You can see it's very faint, but there's still a nice little line here. Chances are the OA won't get rid of this line, and then we'll use a 000 to get rid of the line. Now you don't want to take this all the way up to the half, because once again, that's going to create a new line and take the fade too high. And it's not going to be a medium fade anymore, it's going to be a high fade. So notice how I'm staying right underneath the 1 once again. I can't emphasize that step strong enough. It's very, very important that you stay underneath that 1, because you'll ruin the whole haircut. Now I'm going to use the 3-0 and just use the corners and knock out any dark spots that I see. Just a little bit of dark spots here and there, nothing too major. I see a little bit right there. We're going to have to hit that with the 000, and if it doesn't get rid of the line, we're going to have to repeat our steps. I'm basically just splitting hairs apart. It's giving that nice blurry effect. So now, one thing I can't emphasize enough is you don't want to stay in the same spot for too long. So if you're working in an area for a consistent amount of time, it might look perfect to you and then not perfect to you, and you keep messing with it, and then it just gets worse and worse and worse. So right now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the next step, and then if I have to at the end of the haircut, I'll go back in and touch it up. I like to call this my rough draft. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the 1.5 and make another guideline. About a ½ an inch above the 1A. Notice how our chair moves. It's not stationary, so we don't really have to move at all. So now that I made my 1.5 line, I'm going to come up underneath, and you're going to see that very visible line go away with a 1A. Now if this 1A wouldn't work completely, all you're going to do is go back in with the 1 and clean it up. You see a little bit of darkness right in here? Sometimes the 1A won't pick it up, so you go back in with the 1 and you take care of that real nice using the corners of the blade. Because if you give it the whole blade, it can make a big hole, and that's a big catastrophe that you don't want. So now I'll go back in with the 1. And if you see it right in here, you see that? You'll be able to get rid of that using the corners of the 1 blade. Now you have to be very careful in this step because the 1 doesn't really belong here. That's why I'm only using the corners. Okay, so now that all the hard part is done, here comes the fun part with the cordless Envy Li. What you're gonna do now is simply count. If you can count, you can cut hair right now, because all we're gonna do is go to the perennial ridge down until we knock out this line. Our objective is to get this line as light as possible. Now, some barbers will just go right to it. If you go right to it, it might get too high. So what I'm gonna do is gradually work myself down until this is gone. I'll start with a 3.5. Now, for all of you that don't know, a 3 on the attachment all the way up would be considered a 3.5. A 3 closed is a straight 3. So let's start with the 3.5. Now this hair is long, so we want to preserve that. Then you can close the 3, and now you have a straight 3. Now basically, I'm using this number 3, which is going to be my guideline for my scissor cut. It's a pretty cool way that we're going to start with on the right side of the head. But I'm kind of jumping the gun here, so right now we're going to go to the number 2. Now that kind of did it. It kind of got rid of it, but it didn't. So I have the 2 all the way up. And I'm going to do the same thing that I did on this side to the other side to make sure that I create symmetry. It's all coming together really soon. Once you keep studying these steps, you'll be able to do this pretty fast. So now that 2.5 was all the way up, I'm going to drop it down and try to get rid of this line here. It's very faint. You can barely see it, but it is there. It always helps to stretch the skin with your thumb. I feel like it just gives you more room to fade. It gets into smaller, tight areas when you stretch the skin. Now, if you're unsure about what you're going to do with the clipper or what it's going to do, just have a lighter grip. If you know what it's going to do and you're just in there to strip the hair, get directly on the scalp and move it up and down. Whenever in doubt, use a lighter grip and higher the lever. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to put on a 1mm universal clip, and I'm going to use the corners to do any dark spots that I see. There's a little bit right here. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to fade the beard into the bald fade. So one step at a time, let's use the corners of the 1mm universal blade and hit that dark spot right there using the corner. And there you have it. So now what we have to do is fade the beard into the bald fade. It's kind of like fading backwards. So we'll start with it up because we all know it cuts less. As you can see, it's getting lighter already. So now we'll drop it down lower and only work in this top area where the bald fade is connecting to the beard. Now we'll take it off and work even higher where the beard connects to the bald fade. And there you have it. That is a bald fade connected into the beard. So now what we're going to do is we're going to keep his beard long, okay? And we could even sculpt it a little bit with the Andis Envy closed and outline the whole entire beard to make it really sharp. But before we do that, we're going to cut the top of his hair. So how I'm going to cut the top of his head is I'm going to keep the front long, which is called over-directing the hair. And the back, the perennial ridge, is going to go from shorter to longer as it gets to the apex. Okay, so all his length is going to come from here so that it combs over with the front over directed. So right now, here comes the fun part. We're going to go where we left off with the 3.5 with the Andis Envy, and we're going to use that as a guide in our perennial ridge. As you could all see that weight right there, we're going to get rid of that weight by going in at a 45-degree angle and taking off less hair as we get to the apex, which is the highest point of the head. All of our length is basically going to come right from this part right here, and we're going to over direct the front to preserve the length. So let's start right now by getting rid of this weight right here. At a 45-degree angle, you could see our 3.5 guide, and we're going to cut right into it. It's always good to make a move and then come back and comb the hair and see what it did. As you can see, it's already slightly going away. See our guide, that little short hair? Cut right into it. This haircut is also known as a comb over or a pompadour. Very common haircut right now. I'm doing a lot of these. I'm just keep following my 3.5 guide. Some barbers can even use a 4 or 4.5. It doesn't really matter. It's basically personal preference of what the client wants, how short they want in that peroneal ridge. So now that it's all kind of fading, let's dig into it more so it fades better. See the short hair? And then the long hair, 45-degree angle. Keep this front away. We don't want to mess with this front yet. We're going to over direct that, and that's going to be on its own path. Now I'm getting towards the apex. Once you get towards the apex, you're going to take less off. You see your guide? There's your guide. That short hair, that all started with the 3.5 with the Andis Envy. It's a traveling guideline. Okay, now here comes the fun part. We can get in there with our thinning shears and really chop this hair up. Any imperfections you see, you lay the thinning shears in there and you really give it a nice finish. Now what you can do is you can cross-check it. Cross-checking is very simple and does not need to be complicated. All we're doing is bringing up the hair the opposite way that we initially brought it up from. It's pretty perfect. It's just good to check because people don't want to go home and have an uneven spot of hair on their head. As you can see, the front is still preserved and it's long. So I'm going to show you what we're going to do with that really quick. We're going to take out our regular shears, bring it full up at 90 degrees, and then bring it straight back. That's taking it away from its natural fall position. Still see a little guide right there that we just created. And there you have it. Now what we can do is trim the length. All our length is coming from right here. That's what's making his hair look good right now. What we can do is just kill the dead ends. Then the front, we bring it down at 0 degrees. Look for any imperfections. See little straggles? Just get those right out. So now what we're going to do is we're going to do the shape up. I'm going to share a nice trick with you about the shape up that not a lot of people use. What I like to do with the shape up is I like to use alcohol and a combination of hairspray in one. 50-50 is my mixture. What I'll do is I'll spray some of that in my palm, mix it up with my hands, and put it on the hairline. What that's doing is making all the hairs be intact so that it's really, really nice to shape up. Because you ever do a shape up and sometimes you're shaping it up and hairs just aren't going where you want them to go, or someone has like a bald spot or something where it's just throwing you off. What this is doing is it's just making all the hairs nice and tacked. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to start the shape up, also known as the outline of the haircut. Perfect. So let's start this off talking about my reference points. Reference points enable me not to just wing one side and hope that the other side looks exactly like it. Every barber in here can relate to exactly what I'm saying. So by following the reference points, it enables that both sides are symmetrical, and that's what we're looking for. His hairline ends right here. Okay? Some people want to push it back up here. That's not good. It could still be really sharp and natural right here, so the next day he doesn't wake up in the morning and he's like, what happened to my hairline because it grew back so fast? So let's keep it really natural. Here's reference point number 1. Reference point number 2 is right at the top of his ear. So now we have a line here and a line here. Now the hardest part is to connect the two. Most of it is going to be razor work, but a lot of the Andis will pick that up. your body position is very serious. I'm going to use the right corner of the blade on the left side of his face. And there you have it. Less is more. Now I'm going to come straight down here, follow his hairline. As for the straight edge, you want the weight of the blade to do the work. You don't need to apply much pressure at all. The more you drag it to that line, it's probably going to get the sharpest it could possibly get. Body position is crucial when using a straight blade. Now, asking your client to blow their cheek out basically just stretches the skin. Now, if you really want to make it sharp, what you can do is you can go against the grain with an exposed blade. My other blade holder was not exposed. As you can see the blade very clearly here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to stand behind him and really just kind of rip out any hairs that might be in the way. So now for the mustache. Once again, so what I'm going to do now is just follow the top line of his lip. Stay really close to it. He doesn't really have to move at all. Slow little rhythmic patterns, keeping it balanced throughout the whole cut. Then I'm going to turn this around and give him a nice thick mustache. If you can't envision it, you can't do it. For instance, if you don't know what you want this to look like, don't get started. So in my mind, I just want to get rid of these little stubbles. I'll turn the clipper around and use it like so. If the hair's not cut and I want to get on top of the hair, and there you go. Now, for the eyebrows, use the weight of the blade and just outline what he has. Chances are he doesn't want them very thin. So now what we're going to do is we're going to take out the blow dryer and style it, and that'll wrap up today's lesson on the bald fade. So right now I'm going to blow dry the hair. I'm going to put my comb, my brush, right on his scalp, turn it, and blow dry it. Remember how we cut it. We over-directed his hair here, so it's long, and then it's going to go into shorter hair. I like a natural shine and a flexible hold. That's why I use muck all the time. Just apply a little bit in your hands and distribute it evenly. Start in the back of the crown of the head and really get in there, and then work your way to the front. And there you have it.